Okay, I'm back with Clementine, chapter 3. It's not looking the best right now. You remember what she did last time, right? Even though it isn't really all her fault, right? Okay, I don't even want to think about the school part of Tuesday because it makes me too mad. Margaret's mother sent a note to her teacher today that said, "Watch out, my daughter isn't left alone with Clementine." I told my mom as soon as I got home. Margaret's mother is upset right now, my mom said. I guess I would be too. And then she let me stir grape jelly into my milk to make me feel better. I must have been still wearing a mad face when my dad walked in because he just took one look at me and handed me the key to the service elevator. My dad is the manager of our whole apartment building. He says that means all the people who live in the building and even the pigeons are the boss of him. But he has the keys to everything, so I think that makes him the boss. And he understands that riding the service elevator calms me down when I'm mad. Service elevator in a building is usually not the elevator that most people use to go up and down. It's for like if you have to move heavy things, or if you are somebody who's working on something in the building, then you can use that elevator. So it's like a separate special elevator. Dad said 4 times sport, that's all. And they're painting up on 7. If the painters need the elevator, you have to get right off. So I rode up to 7 to see if the painters needed any help. You never know. And guess what I saw? 3 men painting the ceiling on stilts. I am not even making this up. Need any help? I asked. Want me to put on some stilts? I guess they were being polite because they said, "No, thanks, kiddo. We're all set," even though I could see that there was a lot more to do. I have a text to self connection because there was a person who did that in my house once to put up plasterboard, to put up the drywall. They wore stilts like that. Interesting, isn't it? So I rode the elevator exactly 3 more times, and then I went back home. And when I opened the door, I could still hear my mom talking to my dad about the note. "How do you think that made her feel?" she said. "Imagine, as if our daughter is a common criminal." And my dad snorted and said, "Well, that is insulting. There's absolutely nothing common about Clementine." And then my mom said, "That's not funny." And my dad said, "Yes, it is, a little." And my mom said, "Okay, I guess it is a little, but what are we going to do?" And then I quickly closed the door and went back out before I could hear the answer, in case it was, "Let's trade her in for an easier kid." I sat out in the lobby waiting to get enough bravery to go up to the 5th floor and say sorry to Margaret's mother and ask her for a note that said, "I do not think your daughter is a common criminal." And finally it came. I didn't take the elevator to Margaret's apartment because I couldn't risk running into old Mrs. Jacoby. Every time I see her, she hands me a $5 bill and says, "Run to the store and get me a box of Cheerios, dearie." I don't like to do it because then I have to bring it to her apartment on the top floor and talk to her while she counts out the change and then hands me 50 cents. But if she asks me, I have to say yes, because A, she is 400 years old and I am polite, and B, I need the money because I'm saving up to buy a gorilla and I bet they cost LOTS lots. Anyway, I didn't have enough extra bravery to say no thanks to her too, so I walked up the back stairway. 5 times 12 stairs, which equals 60, and then I went to 5A and I knocked. Margaret's mother opened it and she just stood there looking like a magazine picture of a mother in a magazine picture of a living room. I said, "Hi," and a bad surprise happened. Although I had never practiced it before, my voice sounded exactly like a common criminal's. "You can't play with Margaret today, Clementine. She's spending the afternoon in her room thinking about the consequences of her actions, which is exactly what you should be doing too." Have you ever had to do that? Kind of apologize for something you did that made somebody upset? Doesn't feel good, does it? Okay, fine. She didn't exactly say that last thing, but I could tell she was thinking it hard. Behind her, Margaret's brother Mitchell leaned out from the kitchen doorway so I could only see his head and shoulders. Then, even though he is in junior high and should know better, he grabbed his hair and pretended to yank himself back into the kitchen, and I laughed even though I knew it was his own hand. I do not think that someone should be called the hard one if they make other people laugh. "Clementine, there's nothing funny about this," said Margaret's mother. I didn't tell her what was so funny, and I didn't say any sorries, and I didn't ask for a new note in case I still had a common criminal's voice. I just ran down the hall. And this time I did take the elevator because I was hoping I'd run into Mrs. Jacoby so I wouldn't have to go right home, but I didn't, so I did. And when I opened the door to the apartment, I saw that our living room looked all wrong. My mother was working at her drawing table, and suddenly I realized that I had never seen a drawing table in a magazine picture of a living room. I banged at the door shut hard. Margaret's mother always wears a dress. I didn't know I was going to say this. Margaret's mother works in a bank, my mother answered, still working on her drawing. It might be a rule. Still, I said. I'm an artist, Clementine. I want to be comfortable. I get paint all over my clothes. I have to wear overalls or jeans. You know that, right? Yes, I said, still. My mother put down her pencil and looked up then. Clementine, do you sometimes wish you had the kind of mother who works in a bank and wore dresses? I nailed my mouth down so it couldn't say, yes, maybe sometimes. And I quick looked out the window so my mother couldn't see my eyes thinking it. And then my mother got up and looked out the window too. Our apartment is at the basement level, which is halfway underground. And this means that the windows are right at the sidewalk height. So we both just stood there pretending to be extremely interested in all the feet passing by. What I was really trying to do was to imagine my mother in a dress. I guess that's what she was trying to do too, because suddenly we both made corner eyes at each other. And then we burst out laughing and we couldn't stop. Finally, my mother wiped her eyes and said, oh, come on, it wouldn't be that funny, would it? And I said, yep, it would. And then I knew it was exactly the right time to tell her my secret. When I grow up, I might be an artist. And do you know what she said? Oh, Clementine, you already are. You may end up being something else too, whatever you want to be, but you'll always be an artist. You just are. And suddenly our living room looked exquisite with a drawing table in it. But now my fingers itched to be drawing. So I put on my jacket and I went to the park to find something interesting to draw. My dad says I am excellent at noticing interesting things. In fact, he says if noticing interesting things were a sport, I might have a neck full of gold medals. He says that's a very good sign for my future. He says I could be a good detective, of course, but that noticing things is good for any career. And my mom says it means I could be a good artist too, or a writer. Last year, a writer came to my school and said, pay attention. But she didn't mean to the teacher. She meant to pay attention to what's going on around you so you can write about it. And then she looked exactly at me and said to notice the good stuff and to write it down so you don't forget it. And so even though I'm not going to be a writer, too much sitting still, I notice interesting things and I write them down and I draw them too. In the park, I saw something great right away. A woman eating lentils from a thermos with a toothbrush. Even though she had a fork right there, which she was using to eat her salad. So I asked the lady if I could draw a picture of the lentils on her toothbrush, and she said, sure. And so I did, and here it is. As soon as I got home, I wrote it all down and I asked my mom if we could have lentils for dinner. You hate lentils, Clementine, my mother reminded me. Well, I think I've been eating them wrong, I said. And so we had lentils and I ate them the new way. And guess what? It worked. The lentils stuck on the bristles and didn't slide off like on a fork. And so I got lots and lots of lentils in my mouth, which was a bad thing because I hate lentils. And let's see if we have time for chapter 4. Yes. Okay. Here's start of chapter 4. I'd better not go to school today, I told my mom on Wednesday as soon as I woke her up. I have cracked toes. I put my foot right up on the pillow next to her face so she could see without getting up. This is called being thoughtful. Nope, she said without even opening her eyes to see if it was true. Well, that's not all, I said. I also have heartbreak of sore irises. Nope, she said again, but she still didn't open her eyes. Actually, I think I have arthritis, I said. Mrs. Jacoby was breathing on me in the elevator the other night, and I think I must have caught it. Oh, please, she said, but this time she opened one eye. And then she made exactly the sound Polka Dotty used to make when she had a hairball. I grabbed the corner of the quilt and I covered my head, but my mom pulled it off again. She took my head in her hands and twisted it around to see all the sides too hard, like I wasn't inside it. Do you have a prediction of why she's doing that? What did Clementine do? You've cut off all your hair, she said. You've cut off all your beautiful hair. What on earth were you thinking, Clementine? I wanted to make Margaret feel better, I explained. I didn't want her to be the only one, but I forgot. Margaret's not going to school today. She has an appointment at the orthodontist to have bracelets put on her teeth. Mom groaned and closed her eyes again, but she slid over and made room for me on the warm part of her sheets. I climbed in and I took a big sniff. My mom's part of the bed smelled like cinnamon rolls, and my dad's part smells like pine cones. And right in the middle, it's all mixed up perfectly, and that's my favorite place to be. But this morning, Dad was already off to fight in the Great Pigeon War, and it was fine just being on the cinnamon roll part. My mom put her arm around me. Oh, so now you'll be the only one, she said. I'm sorry, honey, but you can't stay home. You have to go and face the music. So I had to go to school, which almost turned out to be a very bad mistake because I almost had to go to the hospital with the ambulance and sirens and everything. What happened? When it happened in the principal's office when my teacher sent me there to have a little chat about sitting still. And when I walked in, Principal Rice made the hairball sound too. Clementine, she gulped, what have you done? You've chopped off all your hair. I was glad she answered her own question, so I didn't have to. Wow, I said instead. Clementine and Rice, we both have food names. Mrs. Rice sealed her lips tight like she was afraid her teeth were going to run away, and then she opened up the note from my teacher. I can't help it, I said before she could start the little chat. I'm allergic to sitting still. Nobody is allergic to sitting still, Clementine, she said. I am, I said. My brother's allergic to peanuts. If he eats one, he gets all itchy and swelled up and he can't breathe right. If I try to sit still, I get all itchy and swelled up and I can't breathe right. So that means I'm allergic to sitting still. Mrs. Rice squeezed her eyes shut and rubbed her forehead. I happen to know this means this idea is so bad it's giving me a headache because it's the face I make when my mother tells me to visit Mrs. Jacoby. The face never works for me. Plus, I explained, if my brother eats even one tiny peanut, he might have to go to the hospital with the ambulance and sirens and everything. So if I sit still for even 1 minute, uh-oh, I gave my body an extra little jiggle just to stay safe. Phew, I said, that was close. Principal Rice sighed like a leaky balloon. Ooh, did you hear that simile? Principal Rice sighed like a leaky balloon. Clementine, do you think when you're in class you could just try to wiggle a little more quietly from now on? I asked my body about this and it said, sure. So I told it to Mrs. Rice. Sure, I said. Good, she said. Now, as long as you're here, how about we discuss your hair? Thinking about my hair made me think about Margaret, and thinking about Margaret made me remember about her getting bracelets on her teeth. I want bracelets on my teeth more than anything. But then I had a bad thought. What if they had pointy edges? I didn't want to have pointy things stuck in my mind to worry me all day, so I looked out the window because the only way to erase pointy things is with round things, and clouds are good for that. And right away, I saw a cloud that would make a wonderful tattoo. It looked exactly like a dog if dogs had only 2 legs on the top, not the bottom. I'm not allowed to have tattoos yet, which is unfair. So for now, I just draw things on my arms so I don't forget them. But I didn't have a pen. I looked around the desk to see if Mrs. Rice had a tattoo drawing pen, and suddenly I realized something very suspicious. I had never seen Mrs. Rice's arms. They were always in principal sleeves. Do you have a tattoo? I asked. Can I see it? What? Mrs. Rice asked. Clementine, we were talking about your hair. Oh, that was a long time ago, I reminded her, and I added a kind smile because it's not her fault she has trouble paying attention. Here is the first picture for chapter 5. To be continued. Here we go. Clementine.